Well, I'm here with Jeffrey Smith, and thank you for being here. We just stepped out of a seminar that I heard you teach some amazing information, and you are one of the crusaders for anti-GMO. And I really would have to say you're a crusader for saving humanity. And those watching this, if you don't know who this man is, well, he's author of Genetically, he's author of Seeds of Deception, and this is also part of your passion, The World According to Monsanto. So not to do a whole video about GMO, but there's a specific topic that I really want to hit on, because I feel that everybody needs to hear this, and it's really new information. I've been following some Dr. Seneff's work, and you just did a long interview with her that I saw, and I think it's groundbreaking information that I really want people to hear even ahead of time, or at least draw them into the information. For years, I've been talking about the deception of cholesterol, and how people really are deceived about cholesterol and think they're dying from high cholesterol. But Dr. Seneff points out that cholesterol deficiency, or cholesterol sulfate deficiency, is a cause of many diseases. And in the interview, I think that you focused on something really important, that the overuse of glyphosate on GMOs is causing this deficiency. Talk about some of that information that you learned from her.
So first of all, genetically engineered crops, where they transfer genes between species, the most common variety is the herbicide-tolerant crops. Herbicide tolerance means you can spray herbicide on the crops and not kill them. And Roundup Ready is the most popular, and Roundup's active ingredient is glyphosate.
Right.
Now, glyphosate is a very interesting molecule. It binds with all these different trace minerals, making them unassimilable.
Right.
And what it does in the system, it's a number of things because of this, and it's unique and it's efficient. It helps destroy the nutrient availability of these minerals. It kills the beneficial gut bacteria.
Right, which is key.
It's an endocrine disruptor. It blocks the ability of the gut bacteria to produce the aromatic amino acids, including tryptophan, which is a precursor to serotonin and melatonin.
Depression, psychological problems,
insomnia,
obesity, obesity.
Yeah, exactly. It also messes up certain of the enzymes of the P450 cytochrome pathway, which is a detox pathway. So when you don't have all those enzymes in place, then every other toxin that you're exposed to can be amplified because it can't be released from the body.
Right.
And so you have this incredible, dangerous herbicide, and the herbicide is now found in 75% of the air and rain samples.
Well, hasn't this herbicide been used for years? Why all of a sudden now are we seeing more of these problems?
Two reasons. One, the Roundup Ready crops has dramatically increased the use of the herbicide many-fold. So it's, someone said up to 1 billion pounds. I don't have the exact number, but it's huge.
I know in the last 5 years it's escalated dramatically.
In the last first
so,
6
why is that?
It's because
the GMO.
The GMO, the expansion of GMOs. Then you have the weeds outfox Monsanto and become resistant to the Roundup. So then the farmers spray more Roundup. So the percentage per, the amount of tonnage per acre is much higher. And then you also have the fact that Roundup is now being used as a ripening agent. So not just on the Roundup Ready crops, but on wheat, barley.
I heard you say that. I heard you say that in the interview, which is, so that means all conventional grain, if it's non-organic. They're spraying it before harvest?
Right before harvest, and so it kills everything else, and so the glyphosate, which gets absorbed into the plant, all gets stored into the food. So the amount of glyphosate residues in the food is astounding.
Right.
Way higher, in some cases 1,000 times higher, than levels that are associated with certain diseases and breast cancer, cell reproduction, etc. So then when it comes into the body, it does all these things biochemically, and Anthony Samsel and Stephanie Seneff wrote an article in Journal of Entropy, I think it was May 2013, and linked it to heart disease, obesity, cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, Parkinson's, autism, anorexia, multiple sclerosis, etc.
So people watching that are saying, wait a minute, how could one thing be linked to so many diseases? But it is this cholesterol sulfate deficiency. So explain the common connection between glyphosate in this deficiency and then these diseases.
Well, why don't you share because you're the functional medicine guy. You share what you know, and I'll throw some things in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, glyphosate as you just explained, obviously, we're getting exposed to it much more than ever before. Well, glyphosate actually, you talked about how it kills some of the bacteria. What's actually causing the cholesterol deficiency, because it actually kills some of these enzymes. As a matter of fact, it actually kills one of the enzymes that actually is responsible for making cholesterol sulfate. So therefore, we're actually cholesterol sulfate deficient. And by the way, those watching, for years I've talked about cholesterol as being an integral part of the cell membrane. And cholesterol sulfate, actually every cell in your body really can't function without cholesterol sulfate. So that's why it's linked to so many different diseases. I mean, whether it's being deficient in the brain, the heart, we can name different diseases. So, add to that, I mean, you sat down with her, and I think you were as fascinated as I was, because we're both reading this literature and we're excited about it. And that's why I want to bring this information, because the world thinks cholesterol is so bad. And here she's saying, wait a minute, a cholesterol deficiency is the cause of heart disease and Parkinson's and memory loss.
Right. So you can Google that interview, Jeffrey Smith, Stephanie Seneff, Jeffrey Smith, Stephanie Seneff, Genetically, and you'll find the interview.
Find it.
I think 85,000 people have seen it already. There's a number of things. First of all, I want to say there's a new paper out, just released, relating glyphosate to gluten intolerance and also celiac disease, and also the kidney diseases which are deadly in Central America, where they're harvesting sugarcane. And there's a strong link there. Now, I had already come out with an article on gluten and GMOs, how consumption of genetically engineered ingredients or foods could cause or either lead to or exacerbate symptoms of gluten sensitivity, and that's at glutenandgmos.com. And Stephanie Seneff was a research contributor to that, but she said she couldn't give me all of her research because she was working on something to publish, and I'm glad she didn't, because hers came out in a published peer-reviewed journal, mine came out on my website.
I think you're going to have another interview with her on that paper, right?
Totally.
Coming up soon, so stay tuned for that, because this is groundbreaking information, no doubt.
One thing she described, and you'll be better at the biochemistry than I am, for sure, but she said that on the cell, on the outside of the cell membrane, it can store the sugar, the glucose.
That's right.
And so when the sugar comes into the bloodstream, it can be pulled out by the cells and stored on the outer membrane. But without this cholesterol sulfate,
can't do it.
Then it can't do it. Now, if you can't pull the sugar out of the blood, then you have higher blood sugar.
That's right.
And that could link to the diabetes
anything, brain dementia. I mean, sugar. High glucose is poison, right? And when that cholesterol sulfate goes down, your ability to store glucose outside the cell is diminished. And she believes, and many other people now, is that's leading to this surge in diabetes. And when we look at heart disease, the interesting connection, there's something called ENOS. Endothelial nitric oxide synthase. Did I lose you all so far? No. You don't have to know. But what it is it's something that we know makes nitric oxide, which is something our heart actually needs to work, and it's in a lot of the new research about heart disease. But that's the enzyme that it kills. Mm-hmm. So it affects heart disease that way, but also it causes the heart literally to crave cholesterol sulfate, which it needs, and that's why we see a lot of the blocking to the arteries in the heart. And I think she did a great job explaining that in that video. So.
It was a real, I'm not a biochemist, I'm not an ist.
Right.
And I found, when I looked at the paper, it was written as if in another language. So I was happy to dive in and ask her the hard questions, and then on the spot translate it.
I thought you did a great job, because she would talk, and then you would make it more simple.
Let me figure out what you just said.
You kept stopping her and said, okay, let me bring that down into human terms. You did a great job of that.
Thank you.
I thought it was a great interview. That's why I want to bring this information. I mean, the world is thinking cholesterol is the enemy, and here, all these new papers are coming out saying, wait a minute, all these major diseases that are epidemic are actually a cholesterol deficiency and a sulfate deficiency. So groundbreaking information. Also, leaky gut. She talks about how, leaky gut,
right.
Literally the cells shrink when you have a cholesterol sulfate deficiency, and that's opening up the gut and causing holes in the gut. Talk a little bit about this, for one more topic, because it's really important. Bt corn toxicity.
Right. So there's actually two things. Roundup can cause an overgrowth of negative gut bacteria. Okay.
Roundup meaning glyphosate
because it kills the beneficial bacteria like bifidobacteria and lactobacillus, and it leaves the E. coli, salmonella, and botulism intact. Now, with that overgrowth of negative gut bacteria, it can produce zonulin. And zonulin can then result in an opening of the gaps in the cell walls of the intestines. So that's one way that it can create gaps or leaky gut. Then you have Bt toxin, which is found in the genetically engineered corn, and that produces holes
in the
cells directly, because that's how it kills insects. It's an insecticide. And they said, oh, it's not going to hurt humans, but it turns out it pokes holes in human cells in very much the same way, or it appears to. I have to say it appears
and then we have glyphosate leaking right into the bloodstream,
and
possibly the brain.
And you have glyphosate in the bloodstream, you have Bt toxin in the bloodstream, and in the cord blood of the fetus. So you have Bt toxin and glyphosate in the blood of the unborn fetus. Now, with Bt toxin, if it's in the blood, it can possibly hurt the red blood cells, because in mouse studies, it damaged the red blood cells. If it gets into the fetus, it might get into the brain of the fetus, because the blood-brain barrier is not developed. So you have a hole-poking toxin that's also an allergen in the brain of the offspring of this continent and this generation.
Well, leaky gut is responsible for so many different conditions. We know that. I mean, it's driving autoimmune. And I teach about that, and I have an article coming out about that, but driving autoimmune, driving so many other conditions, and yet now we're learning that glyphosate, GMOs, are one of the major causes anyway, ruining America. I mean, ruining the nation. That's why I call you a crusader of humanity, because you are saving humanity, you really are. And I know you're going to get embarrassed when I say that, but this is something, would you agree, that GMOs are one of the greatest threats to humankind ever?
Oh, of course. And the thing is, it's like the footprint of the technology is bigger than other technologies, because it affects everyone who eats. But then when you release it outdoors, which they're doing, it cross-pollinates, it gets into the environment, and it can persist for as long as the species exists. And so you have a genetic pollution that self-propagates. So it could outlast the effects of global warming, outlast the effects of nuclear waste.
Stage?
I said the only thing that lasts longer than genetic pollution is extinction. And so we don't have other technologies that have this huge footprint. And if you look at Seneff's recent paper, Samson Seneff's recent paper, or you look at the work of Nancy Swanson, you do Nancy Swanson Genetically Engineered, you see 24 graphs linking the growth of GMOs or the use of glyphosate with diabetes.
You showed them.
High blood pressure,
autism,
deaths from senile dementia,
kidney
certain cancers. And when I talk to hundreds and hundreds of people who stop eating GMOs, or the doctors that prescribe non-GMO diets, they say the results are dramatic. I mean, people get dramatic: gastrointestinal, immune, reproductive, organ damage, mood, behavior, etc.
You told a story about someone when you interviewed Dr. Seneff about that, someone who came off GMOs, and I hear these stories. Obviously, I hear my patients' stories because, part of my diet is never eat GMO. Eat 100% organic, so you're not getting GMO, and eat grass-fed, because grass-fed, obviously, if cows are eating grain, they're eating GMO. Most likely BT corn.
BT corn, Roundup Ready corn, both.
So, you talked some stories about, that were emailed you. When you write your book, you get a lot of emails.
So the same day that I had interviewed Stephanie Seneff, that morning we had spoken at MIT, where she's a senior research scientist. And someone from the audience said, my 6.5-year-old was violent and out of control. They wanted to kick him out of school. She told me later they wanted to label him retarded. She saw the movie Genetic Roulette, The Gamble of Our Lives, which is the quickest conversion tool I've ever seen for non-GMO diets.
Great film, by the way.
She saw the film, changed the kid's diet the next day, and said the problems went away. So then I asked her, how quickly did you see the change? She says, within a week. And she says, well, actually, within a month I had a new child. None of the problems persisted. And I've heard so many stories like that.
Me as well.
Just incredible.
Absolutely. Well, where can they get these books? And what about the movie? I mean, how do they...
All right, so geneticroulette.com is the book, geneticroulettemovie.com is the movie, and you can navigate from there. Seedsofdeception.com, seedsofdeception.com, so monsantofilm.com.
There you go.
Or you just, and if you want to, I would say the key thing is go to responsibletechnology.org, sign up for the newsletter, look for the patient education materials, the brochures, etc. And to avoid GMOs, go to nongmoshoppingguide.com, nongmoshoppingguide.com, or download the free iPhone app, Shop No GMO.
Perfect.
And that'll help you. And then seedsofdeception.com, you can get to all the stuff.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you.